Sometimes I'll even compose something and I won't set a key signature because I don't know where I'm going to go yet. you know, this idea might start in F sharp minor, but, I might end up in A minor, 10 bars later.
Welcome to A Musical Mind. I'm your host, Richard Raymond II. I'm a recording engineer, music producer, and multi-instrumentalist located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In this podcast, we'll talk to a variety of musicians about the music-making process, as well as the life and mindset that have helped them find success as a musical mind. Thank you for being here. Here we go. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode 10 of A Musical Mind. Today we have on Andrew Stump, a good friend and bandmate of mine. Drew plays keys in Lime Forest when I go back home a couple times a year, and it's always a blast. Currently, he's also a member of the Doors cover band, An American Prayer, who I strongly suggest you go see if you see that they are playing near you. They play all over the country, so please do check them out if you see him on a bill. He's also a member of Lost Pyramids. If you go back to episode number 3, I had on Chuck Wilson, the frontman of Lost Pyramids. But anyway, today is all about Andrew Stump. So we talk a bit about how Drew took up piano, which is probably the most unconventional piano journey that I've ever heard. We also talk a bit about music theory and our relationships and how that has impacted us on our musical quests. So here we go. This is episode 10 with Drew Stump. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of A Musical Mind. I'm here with today's musical mind, my good friend Drew Stump. Drew, how you doing?
Good, good. I'm having a pretty good week so far. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Drew is currently riding shotgun. I don't know if they're on the highway or the back roads, but uh, anything he can do to be in on this call right now, he will. So
We just got on that highway, so shotgun on the highway. There's a band name somewhere there, I think.
yeah, exactly. Shotgun on the highway. I like that. Um, but anyway, I want to know who you are and what you do.
Oh, who I am. Well, as we know, my name is Andrew Stump or Drew. Whatever you want to call me, I will respond to both. Um, what I do. Now that's a question. Uh, I am a piano player, organist, composer, if you will. Um, and that is the shortest answer I can give you as to what I do.
You can expand on any of that. I'll expand on it for you. You also teach piano, correct?
I do. I teach piano, so a teacher as well. Um, I play. I play in a couple different groups, and actually one of them with you um, in Lime Forest. I'm going to plug Lime Forest every chance I get, especially on your own podcast.
Go for it, man.
So there's, so I do that with you guys, and that I think my experience in Lime Forest is it kind of brought me to where I'm at today in this, I guess, in the scene of music and with jam bands and everything. Because anybody who knows Lime Forest knows that another current group that I'm in is 3 out of the 4 members were also in Lime Forest together. Um, Lost Pyramids.
There you go. Well,
So,
for everybody tuning in, reference episode 3 with Chuck Wilson.
absolutely, Chuck Wilson, everybody. Um, my I guess my job, what I do, if you want to call it a job, because I just look at it as this is what I do. It's not a job, but my role in these bands is just to play piano or keyboards or organ, and that's what I do. Uh, what I think what I like best about what I do is because I have so much freedom to play what I want, to say what I want, to um, I guess just to be me, be who I am, do what I want to do with no. I'm not tied down to doing one thing in the group. So I think there's a lot of joy that is within me because of that.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, you found yourself in these groups that do a lot of improvising and where there's a lot of loose parameters,
absolutely.
if there's any parameters actually. And so, one thing I wanted to talk about just because you were sending me a message the other day in terms of uh, exploring and trying new things is using some guitar pedals. I know you've recently got two guitar pedals that you're using with your keyboard, right? Do you
Yeah.
want to tell the listeners what those two pedals are, what made you want to use them in the first place, and what has been your experience thus far?
Um, so I first started with I had to go with something small and simple, just to kind of gear me towards looking into this gear. Um, because I see you guitar players with your pedal boards. You guys got 25 different pedals, and they all do this crazy shit. And I was like, well, I, maybe I should try running my keyboard through a pedal. So the
Yeah.
first pedal I got was the Phase 95. Um, and gosh, I love that pedal. I got it because it looked very simple to use. I had it on my one of my keyboards. It's on the Fox Continental reissue. It has its own phaser setting, but
Mm,
it's not good enough. So I was like, why don't I get a phaser or some kind of phase shifter pedal? So I was looking at a couple different ones. Then I Phase 95. It's so small. It's got one knob. You just turn it on or off, and you adjust the knob to your liking. Um, so
speed,
I got
baby. That's
that,
it.
and then I come to find out, right? That's all that matters, speed.
Yeah.
I come to find out after I bought this pedal. I was watching a video, one that I've seen already, but I didn't pay this much attention to it. Paige McConnell of Fish uses the same pedal for his clav, for his
Mm,
Honer clav. And I was like, huh. I guess it only makes sense that I have it now.
yeah.
Him being one of my influences. Um, and then the second pedal I just got a Super Puss, the analog delay,
Yeah. By way huge.
way huge. Yep, way huge, and it's way huge.
Yeah. I own both of these pedals as well for everyone out there listening. And I've had them both for quite a while. So it's fun to see someone be excited by them again, you know? I've kind of taken them for granted all these years.
Yeah, I at the store that I work at, uh, they had them there, and I was like, you know what? Can I try that one? The analog delay, and I plugged it in, was testing it out on one of the pianos there, and I was like, oh my god, I need it. I bought it instantly.
Yeah.
So
So that exact pedal is the one no, I've not really done this since my daughter was born, but I would play piano for my wife's yoga classes sometimes. We would do like a specialty class and I would just run the SV1 through the Super Puss and that was it. Because if it's just me and I'm kind of like trying to keep it, you know, not super busy, just to have that dun, 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 that pulse going there, keeping, serving as my rhythm, and not just leave that on the whole time, never gets old.
Never.
And the fact that it has the modulation in there as well,
Yeah, and the
where you can get like really warbly. And from my experience with that, it's a very, I would call it dirty delay, which sounds provocative, but I don't mean it in that way. I just mean that
it's
it
dirty.
yeah, like it really will it's not a clear sounding delay by any means, which is actually what kind of led me to get another tap tempo analog delay, which is the DoD rubberneck. And if you're not
Uh
familiar with that one, it couldn't be named better. Like it has a rubbery vibe to it, and it's
huh.
fucking awesome. But what I've learned through the years is like anytime I get a new piece of gear, especially if it's something that I already have, um, for example, I had the Super Puss and then I got the rubberneck, so now I have two tap tempo analog delays. They both go up in value in my heart because
Uh
I start to recognize what it is about the first thing, like, you recognize their strengths when you have something to, like, compare it to, and you kind
huh.
of, like, find purpose for both of them, and that's happened time and time again with pretty much anything that I've gotten,
Uh huh.
so that's awesome stuff. So, I guess what I'm saying is you'll have to see if you experience the same thing, by, trying out not new effects, but the same effect, different company, different vibe, and it'll probably spark some new, inspiration in you. If I were a
Yeah.
betting man. Um, okay, but I do want people to know, and I wanna refresh my own memory, your piano journey, because if I'm remembering correctly, like, you did not truly start playing until 18 or 19,
Yeah.
which for someone no one's hearing you play right now, but Drew is a phenomenal piano player. One thing he does that he didn't mention is he plays in a Doors cover band. Anyone who knows anything about keys knows that that's like not an easy thing to do, and Drew just may as well be Ray reincarnated. So Drew is extremely proficient, but he started so late. And I feel like of all instruments, like piano is the one that people typically start with the earliest. So tell us a bit about um, that story there.
Yeah, I would love to. It started out, and I don't tell too many people this, but I do like to share it um, where I feel needed. So anybody who's hearing this that has ever questioned, like maybe it's too late to learn, I will always be the one to advocate. It never is too late. So I started. I was about. I was between 18, 19. Yeah. And at the time, I was working at McDonald's. Of course, hated it. Um, of course. Um, and I remember telling some friends that it's like, I need something to do. I feel like I wasn't in school at the time, and I was just working at McDonald's. So I was like, maybe I should learn an instrument. Just went out piano lessons for like a month or so, and then I stopped because 6-year-olds are impatient, right? um, so it began there. I was talking to some friends. I was like, maybe I'll take up piano again. And I had a close friend at the time who I'm still good friends with, who he was doing a like a demolition or something on a house, I remember, and he was just working on cleaning the house out for whoever was gonna move in there next. And he called me. He was like, "Hey, there's a piano here. It's free, but you got to pick it up because I'm not moving it. This thing's too damn heavy." So right away, I jumped on it. I was like, I called about 3 friends. I was like, "Hey guys, you got to help me move this piano. It's important. I'll pay you. I will pay you in beer or something.
Mhm.
Uh, but I need help." So 3 of us got in the truck. I borrowed my dad's truck for it. We drive over there, pick it up, get it on the bed of the truck, whatever, load it into the house, and then from that day forward, I was pretty much in my room practicing for like 8 hours a day. I took it as like a full time job almost. Um, and was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Then there's I wasn't gonna let anything get in the way of it. Um, you know, uh, so it started with that. And then I started working an overnight job, which made it even easier for me to spend as much time to practice as I did. Because I would work like 10 p.m. until about 4 a.m. So I'd get home at 5 a.m. I'd sleep till about 11 or so in the afternoon. And then, I would have all day until I had to go to work. So I would practice, then go have lunch. Then I would go back in my room and practice, come out, have a glass of water. I'd go back and practice. And, I would read. I was reading different books at the time, about like theory books and whatever. Then I was like, maybe I should see a teacher in person. Maybe that'll help really push, uh, I guess, like speed up the process,
Sure.
of progress, right? So I met Jeff Kolakowski, who was a he still is a professor at DePaul University in Chicago, and uh, he teaches composition and music theory, of course. And that's when I really started to kind of skyrocket, um, in terms of what I felt I was capable of. He was having me learn classical stuff. I was learning Mozart, Bach, Beethoven. You know, he had me learn this Brahms piece that I remember playing that I loved, and then I got sick of it because I played it so much.
Yeah.
So it started with that, and it's kind of been, that was I guess maybe like the first 2 or 3 years. I was kind of that was my life. Then I started playing with other people. So I was doing acoustic stuff, like just piano and guitar with a couple friends, and was like, "God, it's fun to play with other people too." Um, then I eventually, it just came. Everything was kind of coming in together at the same time. Like I'm working on composition, and I'm working on learning this new piece. Oh, and I'm playing these like rock and blues tunes with people, and I'm doing this, and uh, it without any thought, it was just happening. I was just letting it happen as it was going on. It's like whatever I whatever I was doing was the way I was supposed to be doing it, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I guess if you want to fast forward a little bit, a couple more years, um, I guess I should mention too that since we mentioned that, uh, I play in this Doors tribute and doing the Ray Manzarek parts. Anybody who doesn't know as well, Ray would play the bass lines with his left hand, and then he would play the lead organ lines with his right. So that's that splitting your brain in half, tap your head, rub your stomach kind of thing, but on
Mhm.
another level. The first time I saw a video of the Doors and I saw Ray doing that, I was like, "Holy shit, that is genius! I want to do that."
Mhm.
So that kind of that was also part of the process, was working on playing a bass line and then try to solo over it. So fast forward a few more years, I bought the Fender Rhodes piano bass like they used in the Doors, but I bought it with I had no Doors project at the time. I just bought it because I wanted that instrument. I found a good deal on it, and I was like, I guarantee I will find use for this thing. Sure enough, not even 2 years after I buy it, I get a call from the singer of this Doors band. He's like, "Hey man,
I see you already have the gear. I've heard you play. You could play the songs. It's like come by this address. Let's jam. And so I show up there with my stuff, and that's how this Doors project began.
For everyone who doesn't know, it's that group is called An American Prayer, and you guys play gigs across the country, and they're fucking amazing. I just want everyone to know that, like, if you see An American Prayer playing near you, go. Um,
Yes.
so I feel like the missing link, just get us up to date, is Gio Murari, right? So
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the way, who I've been friends with Gio for a number of years. He's a friend of mine's cousin, so I've known him most of my life. Um, and you and Gio met somehow, somewhere, and that can kind of tie into Lime Forest, which then feeds into Lost
Exactly.
Pyramids, and then we got your
Yep.
whole story laid out. So tell us about Gio.
Yeah. Yeah. I met Gio at where I teach actually. At it's House of Music. I teach there until about 8 or so, and every so often they would do these jam nights where it's just kind of an open jam. Different other musicians will come in, and then we'll all play together and whatever. And I was staying for a few nights a week, and Geo was ended up coming to a couple of them. And at the time, I was it kind of just then delving into Grateful Dead
Mhm.
and really getting into their music and learning um, all these different tunes that they did. And sure enough, Geo, anybody who knows Geo, and if you don't know him now, you know this. He's probably the biggest deadhead that I know. Right?
That's saying
So,
a lot, man. That's saying a lot.
yeah, I mean, that I know. There might be bigger deadheads out there, but I'm saying that I know.
That's a bold
um,
statement.
and so I was like, oh yeah, he's playing. He's got these like Jerry sounding lines going, and I was like, why don't we play a Dead tune together? You
Mhm.
know, and the first tune we did China Doll, which is, like that was the song that made me fall in love with Grateful Dead,
Mhm.
was China Doll. And so I was like, of course, it was the first song by them that I learned, and I was like, let's do it. Yeah, why not? It's a good tune. And we do it, and we've just been friends ever since we played that song together. Um, so that's how I met Gio. And then, a week later, he was like, Lime Forest needs a keyboard player. So that's how Lime Forest started.
Yeah, I remember him telling me about you, and I was I didn't know you, and I was just kind of like, all right, like, I don't know, it felt like I didn't have high expectations at all. And then I think pretty much the first time we all played together, I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And so yeah, and then I mean that was, when was that? Like that was
Was that
during,
that was pre-COVID, right?
like,
I
right,
think
I don't know that it was
maybe a
because
couple months before COVID started. I
I
think.
don't, maybe that you guys were talking because you didn't play the final gig that we played right before everything got shut down was at Montrose Saloon. You weren't there for that, were you?
No.
So I think this
So yeah,
happened
so it must have
during
been during.
COVID, which is weird, but
It feels like that was not so long ago, but it feels like it was so long ago.
yeah, I mean, we went through a global traumatic event, and so I think our memories are a little fuzzy. Anyway, and so then did you begin playing with Lost Pyramids before I moved out here, or no? I don't quite remember that.
Actually, what it was, it was maybe about a week after that last show we played before you moved.
Mhm.
Um, Chuck was there, um, and he came to see the show and support and everything. And then after we were done, he comes up to me and Nate and was like, "Hey, Lost Pyramids needs a keyboard player and we need a drummer."
Yeah.
So that's how. So that already took half of Lime Forest and put them in that group. So yeah, it happened. It happened very quick, which is really nice because I didn't know what I was going to do in terms of playing in a group after Lime Forest.
Right.
Like an actively gigging band other than American Prayer at the time.
Right.
You know, I was looking for I'm looking to do original music too.
Yeah.
So
It's really kind of crazy how it all worked out, and now it just feels like when I go and see you guys in Lost Pyramids play, like it it feels like that was how it was supposed to shake out. That the four of you were supposed to be playing together. And it's great. We get
yeah.
to play together a couple times a year, and we'll do that till we can't walk or whatever. But
Oh yeah,
it's
and
it's
beyond that even.
right. But it's
Probably.
right. You're right. You're like I don't need to fucking walk. I just need my hands to work. Yeah. But anyway, I know that's a long story, but I've met a lot of people who play, and that might be the most compelling story that I know, because I'm just thinking about most people who are 18 or 19 years old, and for you to just get this laser focus and to just fucking dedicate your whole life to that, kind of almost on a whim, is just kind of remarkable to me. And so I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that everyone heard that, because I mean, you already said it yourself, but it is never too late to take
Hmm.
something seriously or to begin learning something new. And
Right.
you are one of
Yeah.
those great examples. I mean, at this point, you can hang with any keyboard player I've ever played, and sorry, I've ever heard, and you're truly, this is like the focal point of your life, and it's something that, again, like piano specifically, I feel like that's the thing. Like, you feel like if you didn't begin learning in first grade, that you're like shit out of luck, and you're living proof that that's a bunch of BS. And not just
Yeah.
like someone who's like, oh yeah, I play keys in this band where I'm, like I'm playing some pads in the choruses, and I'll play some little one one hand lead melodies. Like, Drew can play all the classical music. He can do all the door shit. Like, you are a fully proficient and gifted piano player, like not just someone who plays keys in a band, if that makes sense.
Right.
What's up, guys? Taking a quick pause here to talk about my sample pack, Laid Back and Groovy Guitars. I did this sample pack with 5-Pin Media, the British sample pack label. And in this sample pack, you will find 376 live guitar loops, 144 guitar one-shots, and 142 lap steel one-shots, all drawing on an influence from psych, jazz, funk, and soul, inspired by artists such as Khruangbin, Goat, Fela Kuti, and Herbie Hancock. All these loops are both DI and the amp signal with printed effects, and are distributed over the BPMs 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, and 120, all evenly distributed over 4 different keys, giving you a wide variety of moods and feel to play with. Guys, there is a ton in this sample pack. Check it out. Get all the guitar you need for your beats. If you're a drummer, you want to play along to some guitar loops, whatever you need, this thing has it. I spent a shitload of time on this. Click the link in the show notes. Once again, Laid Back and Groovy Guitars by 5-Pin Media, available on loopmasters.com. Go and get it. So, part of this show is talking about the like the mindset that people have. We're all Everybody on this show is going to be music related to some degree. They may not be a musician, maybe they're just a producer, but they're going to be in the field of music. And culturally, uh, it's the thing that people, "Oh, you'll never be able to make money doing that. Oh, you'll never," type of thing. And it's not
Mhm.
necessarily something I heard in my own home, but, I'm wondering what your experience with that was, but more importantly, I wanna know, like, I was just talking to Chuck the other day, and he was saying how something he's learned about you is that if you decide you wanna do something, you go totally all in. And I've potentially seen that happen, like, with your relationship, and that's also something that has happened, with your piano experience. So I wanna hear more about, like, are there other areas of your life up until 19 where you noticed that, like, character trait of you being someone who can just put the blinders on and, like, really go all in on something? Or was that kind of the first time that that happened? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think, um, it's funny when I say this, and I think sometimes people might give me a crazy look when I say something like this, but I think the minute that I started learning piano again, and I think was the day that I was born, kind of thing. Like that was the day I was reborn into into whatever life this is now, right?
Mhm.
So before that, having such, I don't think I've ever had any activity or anything, any person or anything that I was like you said, blinders on. This is my life, kind of thing. Never had that. I tried school, I tried
Mhm.
working different jobs. I didn't know, but nothing ever made me feel like life is worth living this much as it feels now.
That's even crazier. Like, I definitely would have thought that you'd be like, "Oh, yeah, like, I've always known that about myself," "I was fucking obsessed with Legos when I was 10," or whatever. That's even more
Yeah.
bizarre. Like, your story is just it's so unique, and
Hmm.
I wanna know more. I don't know that you even have the answers, but there's gotta be something else at play here. Like, you were, I don't know, in a past life, you were a trained classical pianist or something where it just, like,
Right.
it was like lit this match and everything was already there in place, but it took
Yeah.
18 and a half years
Hmm.
for that spark to happen, and that's just
To Yeah.
bananas.
Yeah.
But
I think part of the reason why I think why I was able to immerse myself so hard into it too, and fall in love with the music as much as I did was, before I was even born, my mom would play classical music a lot while I was in the womb.
okay.
So I think, I was introduced to this music before I even saw the world. So now that I'm in the world, there's a way to put it. You know what
Sure.
I mean?
No,
The way to say it. Um, now that I'm immersed in this world, I feel like, you know
safe.
that's it's safe.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like,
This is my safe place.
it's homey. That gives me chills because not a whole lot of classical, though you did send me some classical tunes, but we played, jazz over my wife's belly throughout
Hmm.
pregnancy before, like, they could even hear just to try and, like, set the
Uh-huh.
precedent, before
Exactly.
their ears were like, at I forget what it is, but at what point, like, uh, during the gestation period where, like, the ears aren't even developed, but we were like, "No, we're playing
Yeah.
it anyway. We wanna make
Anyway,
sure."
right. Yeah. You don't. Yeah. People. You don't need your ears to listen.
Well, that's true. I didn't even think about it that way. I was just trying to, like, I wanted to make sure that it happened, and I didn't wanna get into a routine that didn't include that. But that
Yeah.
just gives me chills to think about, like, what it might be like for my daughter later in life, to listen to jazz, which she heard
Right.
in the womb very
Hmm.
regularly. And
Yeah.
I play it every morning. we don't do like dedicated listening right now, but when we come upstairs, I bring her up in the morning, um, and like start, cleaning up the kitchen, getting breakfast ready, and I always have jazz on. So it's being heard, even if it's
It's
not the
being
center
heard.
of
Yeah.
attention. Just to hear that dense music,
Hmm.
uh, we'll see what happens. I really have, I truly feel like I have zero expectations for her. Um,
Hmm.
and I have broad interests, um, and there could be so many different things that she could be drawn to. I don't care what it is. I just want to support the hell out of it because
Yeah.
that's just exciting. That's why I wanted to be a dad. So that's a good transition here. Drew is recently married. So am I, relatively speaking, and that's something that we share in common. So we were talking about how you kind of have this ability to go all in on something, and that's what I've seen with your relationship with Bailey. Is
Hmm.
there anything there to share? What's that been like? Because for me personally, um, my marriage now, that was my longest relationship um of my life. And for me it was so fucking hard for me to like to do that. I was going against so many of my patterns that I was aware of all of this, and that's why I pushed through, because
Uh-huh.
I knew what type of partner I had. She was also aware of this. We were just old enough to be like, all right, here's our patterns, like here's our conditioning, here's the shit that went wrong when we were little kids. Like this is why we
Right.
have our conflicts in the way that we do. Like we can do this, even though it may not be going buttery smooth right now. So I want to know what that was like for you. You talked about, you know, you had a couple year period of you playing piano for 8 hours a day and then working. You have zero other responsibilities, it sounded like.
Uh-huh.
So what was that like to find love and then to make that a priority? Like was that challenging? Was it easy? I want to hear about that.
um it, it was an easy decision.
Mhm.
um and my I guess my life now that you know now that we're married here and we're living in a good place, um I think life is even easier than it was. Our our relationship is still the same, I think, as since we've met, so that's a good thing. I forgot who I was telling somebody too, because I get asked this question almost every other every other week, like, oh yeah, how's married like treating you, you know and of course I'm going to answer with my best answer. It's great.
Mhm.
It's great because this is why we got married. I have a supportive partner, um and one who understands where in moments where, if I have a long week, I set up like 3 or 4 different rehearsals. Very understanding of it. Very
Mhm.
like, okay, she knows that's my life, and I would support her the same way. So that's why it's such a good thing here.
That's awesome, man. I'll be curious. Do you guys have you ever talked about the prospect of having kids together, or is that not something you wanna do?
Um, we are deciding not to.
Okay.
Um, most people kind of might ask why, and there's a lot of variables as to
Mhm.
why and why not. Um,
Yes, there are. I'll
yeah.
pause you for a second and
Okay.
say as someone who's going through it, unless you know very deep in your bones that you want to do that, I might say that you shouldn't because it is not easy. It's gonna
No.
change everything, and if there's any it's the children deserve parents who know that they want that in their bones. I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
Yeah. 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 So we are deciding not to, um, because mainly because of like this, it's just gonna be too much. At
Mhm.
least I don't feel financially secure with it, where I'm at. I mean, I do music for a living, so am I ever gonna feel financially secure with myself in that field? I don't know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I would argue that financial security is mostly a mental battle.
Yeah.
Um, but nonetheless, I understand what you're saying. It is even though I'm here saying that and I believe that I don't have it all figured out. That's something that incrementally comes in and can just completely overwhelm me.
Uh-huh.
But on the whole, I've taken massive strides with that like mental money mindset, uh, just money stories, all kinds of
Uh-huh.
stuff. A lot of the podcasts that I work on talk about this sort of stuff, and it's been like phenomenal for me to be able to hear that. And I was fortunate growing up for the most part. However, I did like come from a family with parents who didn't grow up with much. So they that like mindset of lack, I will call it, was something that I learned even though it wasn't like our reality.
Uh-huh.
And so it's something that I carried on. And then me being, I was working minimally to support myself. So I was always kind of in that, oh, I can't do that type of thing, which I was fine. Like I had accepted that. But
Mhm.
when it came to me like, I do want to have a family, like I do um want to get married and some of those things, if unless you're gonna completely go off the grid and raise cows or whatever, you that requires money. And I didn't want to have to like change what I did to make my money, but I had to figure out how to make more of it, which I've kind of done, but more than anything, it's just been a shift of perspective. And that shift in perspective, it's almost like if you can do that mentally, that the shit starts coming to you differently if we
Right.
if we get into that type of mind frame. So that is like where I'm at right now for all the listeners out there. I'm really working on trying to place no limits on what I'm capable of. Um, and that's a big reason why I wanted to start this podcast too. So that was a
Because
bit
there's
of a
no
tangent there. But what's that?
I said because there's no limits.
No, and I just
Right.
I have zero limits on what I'm capable of accomplishing. Um, which I don't feel like I didn't limit myself previously, but it was kind of like gonna be in a band and my band's gonna be successful type of thing. Whereas now it's much more like me just being an entrepreneur, but like letting my business be all things music related because that's like
Mhm.
what I'm fucking that's what I love and that's where I bring the most value.
Mhm.
So having worked on podcasts for a year, it's like, all right, like, well, now I'm a musician first, but I produce podcasts for a living. Like, who better than to make a podcast about music than me? Like, it was like
Right.
I had no choice in the matter. So that's why we're here today. Um,
Mhm.
but the whole reason why you are here specifically is because you had talked about you reached out when you saw that I was starting the podcast and you said you would love to talk about music theory. Um, so is there anything specific that you want to talk about? I can bounce some things off of you or ask you some questions, but if you have a direction you want to go with that, the floor is yours.
Um, yeah, we could maybe bounce a couple ideas off each other. I think the first thing I'll say when it comes to music theory is knowing that there's no rules in it. You're going to be given rules in terms of music theory, but in the long run, there are no rules. you could You could do whatever you want, however you want.
Absolutely. So I'll ask some questions. When you are composing a piece, are
Uh-huh.
you typically conscious of the key that you're in? Or is this kind of like something where you're just kind of playing what you're hearing, um, and then kind of making sense of it afterwards?
Um, I think most of the time I don't think too much about what key I'm in. Sometimes I'll even compose something and I won't set a key signature.
Mhm.
You know, I won't put any sharps or flats of what I'm composing, but I might have, you know, my first idea might start on like F sharp minor or something, a key in quotes that might have three sharps. I'm gonna because I don't know where I'm gonna go yet.
Mhm.
you know, this idea might start in F sharp minor, but I might end up in A minor. 10 bars later, and
Right.
then maybe that idea is gonna stick there for a little bit. And I also like to what is something I tried recently was taking small ideas from the past that I've written that I never completed and trying to somehow mesh them together with other ideas that I had and trying to find ways to make that work. Um,
Primarily
like I
through
had,
modulation, I would imagine.
right. Either through modulation or, oh, this idea ended here. This idea starts here, maybe it just needs some kind of shift in rhythm or like a meter change or something to make it work.
And this
Um,
is, like, where I feel like if coming up with the idea, you're not typically conscious of the key, then you could argue you don't really need to know the theory, but where the theory can come into play is when you're trying to take 2 separate ideas and know how you can place them together. It's kind of can
yes.
be that bridge between those sparks
Hmm.
of just organic influence or whatever. So
Right.
we're
Yeah.
we're
And I
piecing
think,
together how you use theory, you know?
yeah. And theory helps too, at least for me, when it comes to listening
Mm,
as well. Like with like knowing exactly how a Phrygian scale sounds,
mhm,
right? Because y- you've practiced that Phrygian scale in all 12 keys, and you've put it into context in some areas, or you've composed it in something. And now if I'm in a jam, whether this is with Lost Pyramids or whoever, and maybe I'll hear Chuck play something and it sounds a certain way, my ear is going to tell me that's a Phrygian scale, or that is something that through theory, I know that sound has a name, and here it is. And
right.
I know that sound, so I can imitate it or play to it much, much easier.
Absolutely. So that's super cool. I don't I can pretty quickly pick up on Mixolydian stuff, but I'm not so sure. Or what's the fifth mode? I can pick up on a flat five pretty easily, but on the whole,
Lydian.
Lydian, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Like those are two that I can identify pretty quickly, but you have
They're
much
very,
more
yeah. Both of
experience.
yeah, both of those. I mean, going back to Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia, a lot of his solos are Mixolydian.
Mhm. Yep, and
And
that
maybe
was
that's why I fell in love with them so hard, because who doesn't love that mode?
4 and 5, man. Like, that's I wrote so many songs, and this was before I really had any theory knowledge of I would write them on guitar, and it's just where you're sliding shapes, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just, like, very intuitive to just go from, like, A to G or from G to A or from G to F, F to
Uh-huh.
G, D to E, all these just whole step major chord intervals, and that is if we're talking about Western music, when you go a whole step, uh, two major chords apart that correlates to the fourth and fifth chords of any given key. Um, and that is right where the Mixolydian mode fits. So I had written so many songs like that, not being aware of that. Then like Fire on the Mountain was the song, which is I
Ooh,
don't know what key it's in, but it's 4 and 5 the whole
B.
time. Um, yeah, 4 and 5 the whole time, and Mixolydian over the top of that. And I was like, oh shit, like this is the mode that fits over like so many different things that I've already written, like another
Uh,
back nine square.
yep.
And there's numerous songs. And then I kind of like my friend Justin, he kind of pointed that out to me, and I was like, then I like didn't want anything to do with 4 and 5 until Francine came around, which was me saying, no, I'm gonna take back my power on 4 and 5.
Uh-huh.
I wrote Francine, and I was like, how can I make it 4 and 5, but like not make it
Also
four and
have them.
five as
Yeah.
much as possible? So I'm playing like I'd have to grab a guitar, but I think I start it's G and F, so we're in C. That would be 4 and 5 of C. And
Right.
I'm hitting G, but then I like just a typical G bar chord on the third fret, but then I go up to grab the F, and I'm playing a major 9, and then I shift down to the G up at I don't even know off the top of my head. Is that the eighth fret or not? Whatever. Someone can tell me that. So I'm it's G and F everywhere, but I'm trying to do as many different voicings in different places on the neck, and it really kind of doesn't really have that type of feel. But anyway, yeah, I'm babbling here. So those are ways that I think about theory. Um,
Yeah.
do you have a favorite mode?
Me, I
Yeah.
think I just think Lydian and Mixolydian are just and Dorian.
Yeah.
I can't just pick one because there's there's so much good in all of them. I guess it would depend on the context, but I think what I gravitate towards when it comes to composition is I think Dorian is what I'll gravitate to most.
Interesting.
Uh,
So what does that make you think of mood wise or like culture wise? Because Dorian for me, I have a very specific person and culture that come to mind right away.
yeah, I think the reason why I like it so much is because I've used that mode the most. The I mean, when I was preparing for this and learning all these Doors songs, they
Mm,
use that mode like crazy.
right.
Light My Fire, you know, when it comes to keyboard solos, that's like that is I would say the keyboard solo if
Interesting.
you're
Yeah.
thinking of that mode. So learning that, I've spent so much time learning that solo and other songs that they just use it like crazy. So I
Yeah.
think that's why it's my favorite.
So it makes you think of the Doors. And for me, I think of Santana and I think of
Ooh, yep.
Spain.
Hmm.
Spanish
Yep.
Santana. That's like
Yep.
what comes to mind. And I love breaking this down for people. So if there's people who have made it this far who don't have of much of familiar with music theory, um, the best way to explain this is we start out with the key, and in a key we have 7 chords, um, and that goes they're either major or minor. The first chord is major, and that correlates. I'll have you name the modes because I don't have them all memorized. But the first, you can give the Latin name, and I'll add on it. So if we're in the key of, let's do C. Okay. So if we're looking at a keyboard, it's all the white keys, and we're starting with C. That's our one chord, and it's major, and the corresponding mode with it, Latin name, Drew.
Would be Ionian.
Okay, Ionian mode, which is also the same exact thing as the major scale. Um, and so before I continue, if you're super slick, you'll catch on that each chord is going to have a scale or mode that correlates with it. So in any given key, there's 7 different scales or modes that fit with it. But depending on the chord progression that you're playing, some are going to fit better than others. But that's the general gist. And all of these scales um, are composed of the same 7 notes, but the only difference is like the note that you're beginning on. So if we use numbers, it's easier. So if you're doing 1 through 7 for the first Ionian mode, then the second mode, which is Dorian, you're just going 2 through 1.
Uh,
So you're
yeah,
wrapping around. So you're going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Moving on to the third mode, which would be
Phrygian.
um, the note D, Phrygian, and that would be 3 through 2. Um,
Yeah.
we're just gonna do our due diligence and move on here. Next chord would be F. This is the 4 chord. It's major, and I don't know. That is
That would be Lydian.
Lydian. Okay, right, yeah, with our flat 5,
Yep.
and so that would be 4 through 3, right?
Yep.
All right, now we're moving on to the 5 chord, which is the dominant 7th chord, which would be G in this case. Mode being the Mixolydian,
Yep.
and we're going. This is 5 through 4. Um, so again, just 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going too quick. And then we would move on to we're at G, so we're going on to A, which is Latin
A.
Aeolian, which is the same thing as the minor scale. And that would be 6 through 5. So 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And last but not least, we have the kind of funky one, which this chord is a minor 7 flat 5, which is probably a bunch of gibberish. But the mode is
On B here, if you play B, that would be Locrian.
Locrian. Okay. And that would be 7 through 6. And this is typically not used a bunch. Is that fair to say? However, that chord, the minor 7 flat 5 chord, can be fucking a great linchpin when you're trying to write stuff. But yeah, I would say that mode is probably not used a ton.
Yeah, I think the only time I will use it is over a a flat 5,
Okay. Yeah.
minor 5, or even a fully diminished chord that it could still kind of work.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, there's no rules here. This is like knowing the theory allows you to know what won't sound bad. It doesn't necessarily tell you what will sound. Nah, I disagree with that. It tells you what won't sound bad and what will sound good, but you can use your best judgment by picking which mode you want to use over the chord progression. So
yeah, it's something too, and the reason I say there's no rules is because not any one thing could sound bad. If you think that, where most people probably wouldn't choose to play a Locrian scale or something that has a little bit more of a, you know, more dissonance, or something that you don't think makes too much sense, maybe that is the right choice for you as the composer or the songwriter. If you, I think it could sound good if you make it sound good.
right, that's
Some
or that's a
Yeah,
great way if what you're trying to convey is some sort of like unsettled feeling.
right.
That's a great way to like do something that deliberately in air quotes should not be happening. And that's a great way to it's almost like if you have, I work with audio files all the time. If you have 2 songs in 2 different keys and they're playing, you're kind of like, "Ah!" But like
Uh-huh.
maybe you want to create that feeling for 2 bars in the intro of a song, and that's something
Right.
you can do. Um, but with intention in a way that's like different than just hitting
Hmm.
random keys or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to think about a lot of the stuff that Zappa has composed,
mhm.
especially in like his earlier years, which I didn't get into Zappa as much until I met Chuck of all people.
Yeah,
But knowing that, you know, some people might listen to it and think, well, what the fuck is going on? What is this? You know, but knowing that it was intentional, I think is what makes me like it so much more. Because if I didn't know anything about music theory, or if I didn't know anything about music, I might hear that and might ask the same question. But now that I know, you know, after studying theory and everything, I can hear something like that and I'll try to analyze it in my head. Like, oh, did he just do a bar of 13? And, you know, like,
yeah, it's a different listening experience,
uh huh,
and it's fun. You're just kind of like
it's fun.
it's it's like speaking another language, and you're just kind of flexing. You know, if you're if you're in a place and you speak Spanish and you meet someone else and they're the only other person there who speaks Spanish, and you're like, fuck it, we're gonna speak Spanish so that no one else knows what's going on. And
Yeah,
you get kicks out of that. Like I think that's kind
uh
of like
huh.
a similar experience to what you're
I think
describing.
I think
So
so. It's funny. My wife will tell you too. Um, if we're listening to something in the car, sometimes I'll just say out loud, like, "Oh, there it is. There's that Dorian mode that I love so much."
yeah. Yeah, I'll point out little
I'm
stuff like
slowly
that as
but
well.
surely making her making her an active listener.
Yeah,
Meaning, like, maybe one of these days she'll tell me when it's a Dorian mode.
I remember the first time that my wife Sammy kind of pointed out, she's like, "Oh, I hear a phaser," and I'm just like, "Yes, this is
Yes.
amazing." Yeah.
Uh
So
huh.
that's a good kind of full circle moment there. We could sit
Yeah.
here and talk about theory until we're blue in the face, but I don't want to do that to people. If we want, if we get good feedback and we need to do another theory episode, we can do something much more in depth. Maybe even have it
Play, give examples.
right, have it be video. Um,
Hmm.
we won't be releasing the video, even though we're looking at each other right now. But maybe down the road, put that up on YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, but so how I've been wrapping up these episodes is I have made a public playlist on Spotify, and it's called A Collective Musical Mind. And I'm checking. I'm asking each of my guests to recommend a song, or can be an EP, can even be a full album, new or old. Just the only requirement is that it's something that like recently has like lit you up that you're excited about.
um. Okay. I'm going to plug a local band and one who I've had the pleasure of playing with in Michigan. The Early. They just released a single today. I think it came out, and that is called "What to Do with You."
But What to Do with You by the Early. Oh, okay. I was spelling early wrong. There it is.
ERLY. Yeah.
And I'm putting it in the playlist. Once again, that playlist is A Collective Musical Mind. And so far, so good with all these recommendations. I'm just excited. Hopefully, I have no intentions of stopping this podcast ever. I don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully, this playlist gets pretty big and it can be something that we all kind of jam together.
We could
Um,
all listen to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. Drew, Andrew, you said you respond to both. I typically call you Drew. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
your story, and I really hope that um, whether it's piano or whatever it is, I hope someone out there hears this and says, you know what, I'm gonna fucking do that thing that I've always thought would be cool to do, but I felt like I couldn't for whatever BS reason.
Hmm.
So thanks for being here. Thanks for telling your story, and hope you have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Yo, it's me again. What did you think about Andrew Stump's piano journey? I knew some of that, but I was it's probably been years since I've heard his story, and this was the full story without any gaps in it, and I'm just kind of blown away. We recorded yesterday, I'm recording this today, and I'm just kind of reflecting on how wild it is that all that began at the age of 18. If you knew who Drew is today, what he's about, and the way he can play, it's just kind of crazy to me that it just seems like this was his life's journey, but it really wasn't. He just picked it up as an adult, and I think the wildest, most surprising part to me was that uh, up until learning piano at the age of 18, he took some lessons when he was 6, but he did not have that kind of like laser focus. I just assumed that that was something he'd had throughout his life. And it's just even more peculiar to me that that happened in the way that it did. But I'm so glad that it did. Shouts out to Drew. It was a pledge having him on. So if you would like to connect with Drew, you can give him a follow on Instagram. That's at Drew Stump. Just Stump, like STUMP. Give him a follow over there. Reach out, say hi. Drew's a very friendly guy, and he's always kind of sharing about when he's playing next, so you can go catch an American Prayer or Lost Pyramid sometime soon. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to A Musical Mind. I have been your host, Richard Raymond II. If you, your band, or your friend, or anyone you know is in need of mixing and mastering services, I offer that remotely. Shoot me an email. That's richardraymond2@gmail.com. No spaces, all spelled out. You can also give me a follow, Richard_Raymond_II on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. We'll get to making some cool shit. And please like this podcast, share it with a friend, give it a 5-star rating. It ain't too hard to do. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you next time.